Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me this week is Kyle Loucks, founder and CEO of Roll Pros. Thank you very much for joining me today, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks for having me, David. I'm excited to tell you more about my company.
Well, before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. If you could help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Kyle, so telling us a little bit about the company. Before that, though, I'd like to know how you found yourself in the cannabis industry. Did you start as a design engineer, and sort of how did you cut your teeth?
Yeah, so I've actually been a cannabis user for probably about the past 20 years. Definitely found it in high school, and I've always been a very creative person, and always trying to find that new perspective to look at a problem. And cannabis definitely helped with that, and so. I was using it prior to getting my engineering degree and, becoming a product designer. And, I found it a very useful tool as a product engineer. It was kind of like I'd rewind at the end of the day, roll a joint, and whatever problem I had been stewing on, I'd be able to see it from kind of a bit of a new light. And often I'd have these little, epiphanies. So I've used it as a tool pretty much my whole working career, both as relaxation and, kind of help me problem solve.
So at what point were you using, and then all of a sudden looked at a joint and just thought, I think I could do this better?
Yeah. Yeah, almost exactly that. I mean, I saw the emerging market, I saw like the potential there for automation. And yeah, because I kind of, I treat myself as like, I'm a bit of a joint connoisseur, right? Like I always try to make it just right and, try to make the burn a little bit better. And, me and my buddies are always going back and forth and, like who can roll the better joint? And so when it was legalized in my state in Washington, I went and got this cone from the store, and it was supposed to be this big magical moment, my first like perfect commercial pre-roll. And it burnt like crap. And I could tell that they had dried out material in there because it was really hot, not very flavorful. And it was really a big letdown. And, me and all my like fellow stoners, we're like, there's gotta be a better way. And so, yeah, that's when I really started hitting the concepts and, started really tinkering in the garage on making, a better process to creating a pre-roll.
What was the early days like tinkering in the garage? Did it start with a napkin sketch? How did you kind of get rolling?
Yeah, well, it started definitely as in the garage. And, I went down all the rabbit holes, right? Like first I went down the cone filling. I was like, okay, is there some way to like fill a cone better? And I didn't find that, that I was like, okay, you're limited by physics because you have sticky flour. It's like, you can't rely on gravity to create a good density. So then I went down the cigarette path, and those machines also, they couldn't really handle getting the right density. And so I ended up back at like, okay, when I hand roll, like I know I'm actually like rolling it, this direction. And so I was like, okay, well, we got to start there because I know that works. And that was kind of the start of it, and there's, those little like top style rollers with a belt in it or if you've ever rolled a joint with a dollar bill, I knew that had some legs. And so that's kind of like where it started. And then it just kind of got out of control.
Was that surreal? Was there some moment where you're sitting there trying to figure out the problem while smoking, while trying to create a way to automate a better way of smoking?
Yeah, for sure. It's like a self-fulfilling, process where I was like, oh, maybe I'll smoke another joint and think about that differently. Yeah, and there's definitely like a surreal moment when like I had this really rinkety, like 3D printed kind of prototype, and it just like popped out this like perfect joint that was almost it was almost just like our end product. And I remember smoking it and being like, oh my gosh, like this has legs. Like this could be a real thing.
As a joint connoisseur, was there any conflict there? Is there conflict between, a hand rolled joint and one that was produced by a machine?
You know, a little bit. But I really, I made this machine for my fellow hand rollers, and if I when I do talk to them, like Grasshopper, she's like a big influencer out there, and I met her at a show, and we were both like stoked to collaborate. She's like, I love what your machine does because that's what the industry needs is that radial rolling. And she's also like, and my fingers hurt at the end of the day. I can't do that many. And so I what I tried to do is, create a technology that it goes beyond what like the hand roll can do. Like I really want to enhance the ability and the quality of the smoke and the consistency. So I see it as like, I did this for my fellow hand rollers.
What was the first machine?
You mean in my career or the
The first one for the cannabis industry.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so I had this test bed that was in my garage. It was probably first erected in like 2018. And it was, I did all the parts. So I was the machinist. I did the sheet metal. I did all the 3D printed parts. I did the firmware. So it was like this kind of like janky is the term I use piece of equipment, but it was a functioning test bed, and I rolled thousands and thousands of joints through it for the CBD guys that were down in Oregon at the time. And so that was really my first like product, I would say. And then I took a level of sophistication once that fully proved itself in 2018 and 2019. I was like, all right, now it's ready for, to be in the hands of other people. And that was when I had to really buckle down and do some serious CAD work and design and test work.
How long was the design and development phase? And, up until that proof of concept point?
It started in early 2017. That's kind of when I really started thinking about it. And I had a project car that I was like pretty sure I was gonna die in. I was gonna like get wrapped around a pole because I'm like off like racing people and stuff. So I was like, I'm gonna sell this and I'm gonna work on something that is going to, it's gonna turn into a company. And so yeah, it's 2017 is really when I started thinking about things on a different scale.
What was the project car?
It was a 1987 325 IS BMW that I put like an M3 motor in it. I put a turbo on it. I did standalone fuel, and it was crazy fast, crazy fun. But I had just had my first child at the time, and I was like, dude, this is not gonna be good.
It's amazing how that first child really puts personal safety in a different perspective.
Totally, totally. I used to be so reckless and dangerous on the, snowboarding, windsurfing, I was just like, let's do it. But yeah, once you have another life that, is way more important than yours, it's grounding.
Were you working for other companies as a design engineer prior to starting Roll Pros?
Yeah, that was I was a consultant. So my first job, which I loved, was I was actually in the medical device, and I created some pretty cool implants that are saving people's lives still to this day. Um, and then I wanted to do something a bit more like intricate. I wanted gears, I wanted motors, I wanted software, firmware. So I went and worked for a consulting firm, and eventually, I was working on HP printers. I did some work for Facebook and Meta. That was kind of my last thing. Working on some AR, VR headsets. And so, yeah, I had done great things for great people, and I had made some really interesting patents for these companies to, they built their companies on them. And I was like, hey, I'm ready. I need to do one for myself.
What were the implants?
Um, yeah, so it was the main one is it was like a rib implant, and so this is a little. I know the listeners won't be able to see it, but this is a cross section of a rib.
Mm-hmm.
It's the rib bone is a membranous bone, so it's really frail and fragile. And whereas most orthopedics would just throw a plate on it and then sink some screws in, you can't do that in that bone because it'll just pull out. So I created this. It was like one of the first plastically deformable implants. I don't have any samples, but you actually wrap it around the bone and then you plastically deform it so it molds to the shape of the rib bone, and then you sink some screws in and lock it in place. And what you get is just a really secure hold on those ribs and a much smaller incision size. So better patient outcomes, and all those things.
Having, there's a lot less risk when you're developing under somebody else's umbrella. What was it like kind of going out on your own and starting a company?
Oh man, what was it like? It was, it was one of the hardest and best things I've ever done. It's, I see that's the same with kids, right? They're not easy. It's hard, but you learn a lot about yourself. And really that's been the biggest learning is I'm learning what I can do better and learning how to motivate other people. Really, I'm learning a lot about people. I think that's the biggest hurdle, and I don't think you can read a book to learn that. It's like you kind of just got to get into the fire and see who works best in each situation, and then you're working on getting them into the right spot and making sure they have future goals and that they're working on hitting them. And that was kind of the biggest learning.
So what are you learning about people?
um, Everybody is different, and everybody has something to bring to the table, and and unlocking the full potential of people is sometimes as easy as leaving them alone, and also sometimes it's as often as just creating that personal relationship with someone and kind of making them feel comfortable to show you their full potential. So yeah.
Do you have or hold any patents for your machines in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and it was a pretty tricky space because tobacco, there's a lot of old patents in the tobacco area, but I have a patent that is it's pretty stout. I'm doing an international patent on it right now, so I'm filing in a bunch of other countries. But yeah, I do.
Does it pertain to the way that the joint is constructed?
Exactly. Yeah, and I don't want to go too far into it, but yeah, it's on the one of the cool things about our machine is we're able to do a wide variety of sizes and shapes from one machine. And so that's kind of what I focus on is like, you can run a little pinner like this all the way up to like a 1 gram, like almost looks like a blunt. And so that's really that's our niche is like giving a company something that they can develop multiple SKUs off of just one machine.
I also read that yours were the first machines to come onto the market that didn't require pre-made cones. Why was it important to accomplish that?
Yeah, that was it. There's a couple of things from like as far as like how the machine runs, like when you're dealing with a prefabricated cone that comes from overseas that's handmade, there's just going to be variability in your inputs. I treat that as an input. So taking it off of a roll, which is what we do, we've got a bobbin, which is a giant roll of paper. You just get more consistency in your inputs. The real reason, is the warm and fuzzies that I get from, creating a more sustainable supply chain. I order, the bobbins, they come on a pallet. So one pallet holds about 400 bobbins, which accounts for, millions and millions of joints, right? And I can ship that over once, hold it in my facility, and then ship it directly to my customers. And, it saves a lot on like, there's no giant container coming across the ocean with a big air-filled, container that has a bunch of cones in it. So yeah, it's that sustainability that really, makes us feel good at night.
When you were working with your paper manufacturer, how are you able to maintain or kind of cut out that variability that other people have seen, not just because they were handmade cones, but also just because the paper had different weights and a lot of different characteristics from cone to cone?
Yeah, we work directly with the manufacturer. So it's the paper mill, and they're located in France. They've been making paper for, hundreds of years. And they, the other nice thing is they know their inputs as well, really well. So it's like we know that we're not getting any, no heavy metals in there, which like, I question some of the other paper mills. It's just a very seamless process. And they've been well vetted by the tobacco industry too. So it's like, they kind of get that. They've already they've already had to jump through all those hoops. So then when I come in, I'm like, hey, do you have COAs on this batch? And they're like, yeah, of course. So it's nice.
Why do you question some of the other paper mills?
Oh, because they're down in like Indonesia and and plants are really good at pulling impurities out of the ground. And so, you could have a whole forest that you deforest and, put into a mill. And, you know, if you don't care about where your paper's ending up, which, some of those mills probably don't care, they're just selling it super cheap, then they're not going to test for these, potentially really bad impurities. So that's why I question them.
So are the bobbins sold with the machine, or is it you buy the machine and kind of just reorder the bobbins as a consumable?
Yeah, it's a consumable. So you just, yeah, you reorder them after you buy it. And there's about, each bobbin holds about 40,000 joints. So, you order a couple a month. And the other nice thing is it's quite a bit cheaper that way too. So our paper costs to the customers about a penny. And then our crutches are 2 pennies. So, all said and done, you're in about 3 cents per joint. And that's roughly like half of the lowest cost I've ever seen of a cone.
How many machines do you currently have on the market?
I think we just shipped out machine number like 94. So yeah,
Okay.
there's about 80 active machines out in the wild right now.
What is the training process like? Is it fairly simple for, unskilled workers to kind of get a hold of?
I think it would be if we were running with a consistent input, like that's the one thing the biggest thing that we train about is the material input. So, because we are dealing with an agricultural, commodity, there's going to be a ton of variability in what you end up putting through the machine. And as such, we have the adjustments on the machine to make sure that you can handle this wide variety of inputs. I'm talking like CBD is going to run different than like a really, high key strain that's grown indoors and really dense. And so we've got these adjustments on the machine so you can run basically anything, but you got to know which adjustments to make and when. And so that's the biggest part of our training is, to kind of, we give people tools to qualify their flour and figure out, we have like the compressibility of the flour, the particle distribution of your grind. And then, with those different factors, you can then run the machine as such. So, we do a 5-day training. And we recently started doing like a follow-up 2 to 3 day where, we do the whole on-suite training 1 week, and then we come back in like a month and, kind of get those follow-up questions.
What has been the feedback from the people that have brought the machines in-house?
They love it. They love the quality of the product that comes out. Like, and that's really the whole thing is like, I really wanted to create just the highest quality joint that you can and do that at scale. So that's been the biggest feedback is, everybody's just like, oh my gosh, I love how it burns. I love that I can put my fresh sticky flour in, like they can run really good flour through it and infused. So, they love it.
So it works with infused flour as well?
Yeah. That's because we designed it around, being able to run fresh sticky flour. Mm-hmm. We found that people can add in their infusements into the material before they put it into the machine, and you can run infused.
So, when you first started the company, I feel like you really felt like you knew joints, but like once you got into the business side of things, did it kind of change your perspective on the industry and kind of everything going on behind the scenes?
Well, the one thing that did change is everybody is pretty much like me. Like they're looking for the same thing. They just don't know how to get there. That's what surprised me about the industry is like everybody's got a really deep passion for the flour, right? And they love their customers. They love providing this flour to their customers. And I found it was hard to get people over the paradigm shift of, no, this isn't a cone, but it's a lot better, There's this, and people always talk about paradigm shifts and with new innovations, the smartphone's a good one. A lot of people, rejected that at first. And then eventually they came around to it. And so that was definitely something is, you gotta convince people of the, you gotta think about it a little bit differently. But yeah, most of the people that got it and that did roll their own joints, they get it when they see the machine and they're like, oh, this is going to be great for my customers and it's going to really show off our flour. So
do you still struggle with that paradigm shift and the educational process it takes?
We're getting better at it. I think we've been on the market now for about a year and a half. And so people are starting to look for the new thing, so they're trying to differentiate their brands. And I think that it's kind of turned from like, trying to change these people that were just really early on trying to replace labor. They're just like, we got to get more efficient. And now I've got these people that are like, oh, this is different and it's better. And we want to grow our company by showing that we're innovators. So that's kind of the shift that I'm seeing.
So is there still a holdup when it comes to investing in pre-roll production?
Yeah. I think, kind Because typically, pre-rolls have been undervalued, I think for the past, 5, 6 years, because everybody just treats them as a byproduct. You put your trim, you put your secondaries, your C's and D's, you put them into pre-rolls. And so the shelf price of your pre-roll is so low that you don't really want to invest in, putting high quality flour in or invest in, innovative automation. Um, but we have seen in the recent years this trend where it's like, okay, people are starting to understand the convenience, and they're starting to see the difference between like a low quality pre-roll and a high quality pre-roll. And so we're definitely seeing that trend now where it's like people are they're gaining trust. That's really what it is. Like you're gaining trust in your consumer base to go with a higher quality product that's a little bit more expensive. Um, and so yeah, I think the people are getting there. It's just taking a little bit of time.
So to that point, is it possible to achieve craft quality at scale?
I definitely believe so. Yeah. Um, and that was one of the reasons why I didn't want to make my machine too fast. I mean, if you're doing 5,000, joints a minute, right? How are you going to be like, whoa, slow down, so, ours is like, it clocks at 1,000 per hour, but, we only say, 750 per hour. And that's about the right size where you can have somebody on the back end of the machine, checking the joints, being like, oh yeah, that's a good roll. That looks right. And then, they can be operating the machine as well.
So at 1,000 per hour, what is the ROI?
The ROI, it really depends on, your state and where, what kind of profit you can get off of it. There was a guy, one of my first customers, and he was rolling around with one in a trailer, and he had a great business model where he'd roll into your farm, roll the machine into your farm, and roll up however many pounds you needed, and then he'd put it back in the trailer and drive off. And he said that he got an ROI on the machine in 6 months, and I've heard as little as 4 months.
Okay. What has the feedback been when it comes to like maintenance and cleaning the machine?
Yeah, it's very important. Like I stress that it's like, make sure it's clean, we have a preventative maintenance schedule. The feedback has been it's a lot better than some of the other machines because it's smaller, and like our flour feed path is shorter, and just in general it's easier to clean than most.
Do you find yourself in an upward battle because the machine is smaller and it just looks, I mean, because of the simplicity of it, do you find yourself kind of like selling how it's still better than some of these larger footprint automated solutions?
Yeah, I mean sometimes I mean you gotta get people to understand the technology inside of it, right? And once they see that, like how different it is, then it's like there's something clicks and they're like, oh, I get it. It's smaller, but it is more like innovative and efficient. So yeah.
I wanted to talk about the new draw check machine, just because it seems like that machine in particular, it's all about airflow. How did you come up with the design, and what was the genesis of the idea?
Yeah, so one of the cool things about our technology is we have the ability to change how tightly rolled the joint is just by the touch of a button. And so no matter what flour density or flour grind size, we're able to tighten that roll more or less. And kind of how I told people to dial it in is like, okay, do a touch, a field test, and then do like a light draw, like see how well it pulls. And because our joints are open tipped, you can actually do that and get a reading on it. But really, that's a very qualitative metric, and you have to have, a very skilled operator to set that, feel. And so I was like, well, I bet we could put together something that could actually give you an actual reading of the vacuum drop. So yeah, my engineers put together a little prototype, and we sent it out to some customers. And now you can qualitatively say to your operator, like, hey, make sure the joints are between 25 millimeters of water and 35 millimeters of water vacuum drop. And now they know how to dial in the machine without doing a mouth pull.
Okay. Was that as a result of feedback from customers, or was that something that you kind of had on the roadmap already?
Definitely feedback from customers. Yeah, that's one of the things that we're pretty big on is, we're listening to the customers, and, we're very much involved in their business as much as they are in ours. And so, that came from an operator that was like, I hired this new guy and he just started making them all really tight. And, he's like, how do I prevent that? Right. And so that was like a perfect little like light bulb was like, all right, we can do that. So yeah, we're definitely really connected with our customers, and, we're always trying to find new ways to make them happy.
So what are the upcoming new ways? What are some of the things that you guys are working on that we could expect to see soon?
Well, I don't want to give them all away, but we're definitely working on a blunt option. So that's we've definitely heard that from several people, and my sales manager that's down in California, he won't let me he won't let me get away with not doing it. So and because we're rolling how we are, we're probably one of the only pieces of technology that could do it. So yeah, we're gonna take advantage of that, and probably have that out sometime mid next year.
Given the nature of the pre-roll, as you had mentioned before, is like sort of a second fiddle product, I guess. Do you see claims being made on the market with other automated solution and just kind of question the legitimacy of those claims?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I see some of the claims and I'm like, I don't know how you're going to be able to do that and still have a quality joint every time.
Mm.
Mainly with like anything that's in a cone, you got to fill it. And in order to fill something, you're relying on gravity and the material properties. And in order to make it fill appropriately, you got to dry it out. Like that's kind of how or pulverize it. And those two things, you lose all your terpene profiles, and you really lose the flavor, and the effects too. You lose those terpenes, you don't get the entourage effect as well.
The cannabis industry is made of entrepreneurs like yourself, and a lot of times it's scary for people to make that leap. So what advice do you have for prospective entrepreneurs that are looking to take the leap?
I mean, I think cannabis is a great space for it. You don't have the big, you don't have a big like Nike or a big HP that you're coming after, right? It's like, there's definitely still space to like claim as your own, as with any new emerging market. And I think, no matter what, if your passion is aligned with the flower and like its effects, then you can do no wrong. If you're like, I'm going to come in and, buy out the supply chain and, make a bunch of money, then it's like, that's not going to lead you down the right road. But if you are passionate towards the flower and you're trying to get, a better experience to your end consumer, I don't think you can go wrong.
So when it comes to when it comes to experience, do you prefer rolling your own still, or do you prefer them off your machine?
Oh, definitely off the machine. I mean, yeah, I and I roll joints every now and then, but I've pretty much lost my touch because the past, 5 years I've been rolling with a machine. And like I know how to run it, so I get just the right joint. I usually use glass tips, and like I know how to make them bougie, and um so yeah, I roll with the machine.
Have you migrated the rest of your friend group to the machine?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm definitely the most popular joint rolling guy. Like, yeah, they all like to come over to my garage and we'll roll up, and I mean, that's the other thing is like, it's a good time. All right. Like all my customers, when they come out for a demo, we roll a bunch of joints, we smoke them, and then we go, eat some lunch. It's like, how can you ask for anything better in your day job?
Um, One part of the process that I guess I skipped was when did you move out of the garage and into a bigger facility?
So that was right at the end of 2019. So believe it or not, I think the first four machines came out of the garage. And those were all sold just off of like a joint. Like, so I had some CBD joints that I sent off to the customers, and they didn't even see the machine, but they loved the joint. And so they bought a couple of machines. And that was kind of like that was like my seed money. I haven't taken on any, investors yet. And so my customers they were my investors, and they afforded me the opportunity to, yeah, move out of the garage. And I'm actually in the same building that I moved into. It's an old post office and we were just in one little sliver of it. We had about 1,800 square feet. And recently in 2022, we had the other tenants move out. So we expanded to we're at about 16,000 square feet now.
How has your life changed going from startup in the garage to, managing a company now?
It's definitely changed. That 9 to 5 of just, okay, I just got to design this product, and make one customer happy. That is that's forever gone, And now it's like, now I'm all about building a team and putting the people in the right place and giving them that responsibility. And that's probably been the hardest thing. I just want to take it and be like, I can handle this. But it's like you just, as a CEO, you can't do that. You got to be able to delegate and give people that trust and that confidence that they can handle it.
As a CEO, do you still get an opportunity to do some of the engineering?
I do. Yeah, I'm blessed to have I have a really good COO. His name's Nick Buck, and he can really handle more of like the day-to-day operations, and then yeah, I'm able to still I work really closely with the engineering team, and we're always working on the new innovations and the next fun products. So I do get to play still.
Okay. What are some of the major markets for you right now? And are there any areas that you haven't broken into that you're hoping to soon?
Yeah, it's funny, like we see it shift. I think right now, like Missouri is pretty hot, St. Louis, and New Jersey, and kind of like right now it's like the New England companies I feel like are heating up again. Um, and I'd like to get more in California. I feel like that one was a bit of there's just more hurdles there. Um, and then I also want to start looking overseas, like Thailand, Amsterdam, Spain. I hear that they're trying to legalize it. So yeah, I'd love to take a few trips over there.
Well, Kyle, I really do appreciate you taking the time and letting us know a little bit more about Roll Pros. But before we get out of here, is there anything else that we might have left out, or anything in particular you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience knows about yourself or your company?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, if you haven't heard about us, give us a call and or find somebody in the market that you're in that has one of our machines. I'm happy to send people to my customers because we work really hard to make sure that everybody's happy and operational. So yeah, I think come check us out. We're at rollpros.com. And yeah, if you want to reach out to me personally, my LinkedIn is just my name, Kyle Loucks, and I'm always happy to have conversations. So and thanks again, David, for setting this up.
Oh, absolutely. And one thing I'm curious about is, so do you get a lot of business via word of mouth, or is it one of those things where this is kind of like a differentiator, so people kind of keep it closer to the chest?
Good. Yeah, we get both. At first we'll land a machine and people will be like, I'm not going to tell anybody about this. I got the secret sauce. And then it's funny because they usually are the ones that are so excited about it that then they do tell their buddies and word does get out. And yeah, we definitely we rely heavily on referrals and and that word of mouth. It's a beautiful thing when somebody comes to you and you're like, oh yeah, I saw the machine at Fat Panda and I love their joints. I'm really just here to meet you guys, and you're like, oh, that, makes my job really easy. So, yeah, word of mouth is a big for us.
Do you have any plans to go to MJ Biz?
Oh yeah, we'll be there. We always have a big booth there. That's one of the last ones that we kind of go to, just seems like with our particular businesses that we sell to, like not many people are going to the trade shows and yeah, but that's one that we usually go to.
Excellent. Well, I hope I have the opportunity to see you there.
Yeah, for sure. Stop by the booth. I'll be there.
Excellent. Well, Kyle, thank you again. If not any sooner, hopefully we see you in Vegas.
Great. Yeah, can't wait.
Excellent. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. For Kyle Loucks, founder and CEO of Roll Pros, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.